Hello and welcome to Foreign Pulse again. Viewers, the world is changing very fast and major upsets and turnarounds are occurring in front of our own eyes, and it's transforming the way the world is structured. And this is one such week where US President Donald Trump has scrapped a hard fought and hard achieved diplomatic success of Barack Obama, the Iran nuclear deal. We are also seeing religiously motivated political violence in Pakistan, where the interior minister has been shot by an extremist. And last but not least, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is making an effort to rebuild India's political capital in our neighborhood by again visiting Nepal. So today we are looking mostly at India's immediate and extended neighbors, but to take this story forward, I am privileged to have my dear friend and colleague Professor Sheetal Sharma of Jawaharlal Nehru University. She will be the analyst today on the show. So let's get going. Donald Trump's decision to scrap the Iran nuclear deal, it's a fatal decision and in many ways a low point for American diplomacy and leadership in the world, because it confirms that the US president is not interested in multilateral processes and does not believe in them at all. We have seen he has pulled out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership in trade, he pulled out of the Paris Climate Accords for the environment, and now the six powers including United States, which had together come up with a compromise based win-win solution in 2015 for the Iran nuclear problem, he has decided to abandon that too. Let's hear a report on this first.
On May 8, US President Donald Trump announced that he is quitting the Iran nuclear deal made by his predecessor Barack Obama. Trump labeled Iran as a regime of great terror and vowed to confront it with the highest level of economic sanctions. Hardliners in Iran who never trusted the US now have the upper hand, and uranium enrichment could restart. Regional rivals of Iran like Saudi Arabia and Egypt may race towards acquiring their own nuclear weapons. European allies of the US are trying to still cooperate with Iran. What credibility does the US have as a diplomatic partner after scrapping a deal that was working so well? Is the Middle East destined for escalated arms races and wars? Can Trump be trusted by North Korea if it dumps Iran like this?
Can Trump be trusted? Some weeks ago I had asked the question in Foreign Pulse, can Kim Jong-un be trusted? Trump is saying he doesn't trust the Iranians, and the world is saying we don't trust Trump. So this is indeed a low point, and it doesn't look like we are actually making any progress towards nuclear disarmament. In fact, this example is going to be held against Trump whenever he enters into any negotiation with any other country. So clearly the credibility of the United States as a partner which will honor its commitments and endure in its promises is at stake. And Sheetal, it doesn't look like Trump has learnt very much from past errors, because we have seen how he has been isolated. The Trans-Pacific Partnership went ahead without the US. The remaining 11 countries did it. The Paris Climate Accord is still on, even though the US has pulled out. And likewise, it looks like the Europeans, the other partners who are part of the negotiations for the Iran nuclear deal, are saying that they are determined to continue with some aspects of it, even though the US was a major player in it. So clearly Trump is a wrecker and a destroyer of many of these processes and institutions and regimes. But maybe there is hope, because the Europeans still want to do energy trade with Iran. For viewers' information, Sheetal, 25 billion is the total trade that the EU member states have with Iran, especially for oil and gas, while the US has just 210 million. So the stakes are much higher for the Europeans, and they had invested a lot of diplomatic capital in the Obama era to make this deal happen, and now it looks like all of it has come unstuck.
Sriram, once again, when we see this situation, a kind of chaos has been unleashed by Donald Trump. and this is containing more the imprints of his reckless nature, which he had earlier promised also, and we have seen in number of other like TPP, withdrawal from TPP or Paris Accord, that unilaterally he has been deciding that what he has to do. And more often than not, we see that he has not been taking into account the political fallouts or the consequences of all these things that he has been doing. It shows more like, the media reports say that the square face, and then he decides that he is the leader without even thinking that what kind of political and geopolitical implications such kind of actions are going to have. Certainly in this case, the European Union would certainly want that the deal continues or something does not come to an abrupt end, because this will imbalance the entire equation in the Middle East. And as you see that there are some Russian allies such as Iran, along with that China, Russia, backing the Syrian government, and the other side we have Israel, Saudi Arabia and the US forming another ally. So the kind of geopolitical balance or imbalance it would lead to will certainly have a political and further social implications in the region.
Yeah, Sheetal, in fact, the Israelis have already sounded an alert on their border with Syria near the Golan Heights, saying that the Iranians are moving, their proxies are moving heavy artillery and missiles closer to the border, because now it is almost like the war is, already there have been multiple wars and proxy wars, but the danger of direct war seems to be increased by the scrapping of this deal, because it's like this: if the Iranians restart the enrichment,
Absolutely.
and then Israel will say that we are left with no option but a military strike, which will lead to retaliatory attacks by Iran, and the spiral of violence seems to be all set to increase, even the arms race that we are talking about.
All the countries in the Middle Eastern region already have so much of internal strife and conflicts. There are parties within the nation which are fighting with one another and trying to have control of either the military or the government or strategic resources and other things which are important for winning these wars. But at the same time, when you create a kind of uncertainty, imbalance in the region, what will happen that the conservative forces which were so far voicing them or echoing with the moderate voices now will have a greater say, they will come in the driving seat. And what will happen to the liberal and moderate Islamic?
Exactly.
They will feel somehow offended or marginalized in the process.
Talking of moderate players, Hassan Rouhani, the Iranian president, said henceforward the Iran nuclear deal will work only with 5 countries, and they seem to be confident they can still pragmatically eke out some kind of a working arrangement with the other partners, because huge business deals and investments have been promised in the last 2.5 years since the deal was signed, and all of those are now hanging on fire because of Trump's decision to unravel the whole thing. So I think the pressure will be on the moderate forces, because even inside Iran the hardliners are going to say, we told you, the great Satan is a great Satan and we should never have done any deal with them. And some are saying that as war and arms races are now likely to intensify, then Rouhani and the moderates in Iran will be under tremendous pressure domestically as well, not to cave in and to go in a more confrontational approach. So overall, it's not looking good for balance, as you said, and definitely not looking good for forces of moderation and voices of peace in the region. So let's move on from the Iran story and go to the east of Iran, which is Pakistan, our neighbor, which also is undergoing some sort of a rise and uptick in religiously motivated political violence. Let's listen into this.
On May 6, the Interior Minister of Pakistan, Ahsan Iqbal, was shot and wounded in Punjab province by an Islamist extremist. The attacker belonged to Tehreek-e-Labbaik, a hardline group which blackmails the Pakistani government to maintain blasphemy laws and impose Sharia. The minister was targeted for his sympathy to Shia and Christian minorities. Politically motivated violence is rising in Pakistan ahead of general elections in July. Islamist fundamentalists backed by the army are trying to weaken former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's party so that Imran Khan has a better chance to come to power. Is this coming elections in Pakistan a chance for the army mullah nexus to take over the country completely? Can religious and sectarian minorities survive in the climate of impunity?
elections are coming, as our reporter says, and indeed it's a very grave situation that the interior minister in India, we would call him the home minister, a very, very critical position, somebody who is in charge of national security, himself being shot like this at a public rally in Punjab province, which is the citadel for his party, the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz. It's really shocking in that sense that you have high level personalities being targeted now for assassinations. Pakistan has had a long history of extremism, and we are quite familiar with this. We've been victims of this as well. But the question about the Islamic identity of the country has really come center stage with this group, Tehreek-e-Labbaik, for example, the one from which the assailant came. They have been trying to emphasize a kind of a extreme hardline majoritarian vision of Islamic identity in Pakistan. Going back all the way to the 1950s until today, these forces have been agitating for Sharia, and they had succeeded in imposing it in one of the provinces in Khyber. And now it seems like they are coming out in the open. We know that most wanted figure for India like Hafiz Saeed has also spearheaded his own political party called Milli Muslim League. So now we have a situation where the elections are coming and Nawaz Sharif himself has been removed from power. And Sheetal, it's like seems like they are going to go after more and more government figures as well as anyone who is seen to be opposing the hardline agenda, so that they can clear the field for a puppet like Imran Khan.
Sriram, once again, if you look at Pakistan, such kind of parties or sectarian groups which have a high nuisance values are always there in picture. And in the previous elections also, we saw almost 70 to 80 people who were assassinated on one or the other pretext or reason by these hardliners. Now, what is very problematic for Pakistan is that the country is also, is already facing so much of economic and political uncertainty. At that time, if these kind of forces come and they try to take reign of all the governance and bureaucracy and all these things, it would be escalating into a kind of free downfall, where you do not have any brakes applied on how far you can allow the conservative parties to rule. Now, this is something regarding the blasphemy law, and why this particular Interior Minister Iqbal has been shot at, or he has been targeted, because a large number of assassinations and persecutions have to be done. Sorry, not assassinations, persecutions have to be done, but he is not. They are thinking that the party is not going ahead with that. So somehow they are feeling that the government is lax. It is having a kind of moderate or a liberal
and the
view
Islamist strategy, Sheetal, has always been to use the state power
to
enforce their
people.
will upon the society.
Absolutely, and that is what they are doing. It's an aggressive enforcement of blasphemy law, and whatever they want to see as prophets rule on this planet or at this point of time, and they are supposedly saying that we are unarmed. Well, however, this kind of action is indicating that they can be aggressive and
so this is part of a power play, Sheetal. What we are saying is, this is not just sheer hatred. It is something that is orchestrated, and we know that the security agencies generally sympathize with these kind of groups. Last year, when this Tehreek-e-Labbaik was asked to call off its so-called protest march to bring down the government, they had each been given 1,000 rupees, Pakistani rupees, by military representatives, and it was all captured on video saying shabash, well done. So now it looks like, if the Nawaz Sharif's party is being weakened, People's Party remains weak under Zardari and the Bilawal Bhutto, and now it looks like the whole field is being set up for Imran Khan's coronation, and he will not be averse to these ideas, because he has taken the help of the Taliban in the previous election to win in Khyber, and he continues to have this hardline anti-India and Islamist kind of orientation. So I think we are in for real trouble, because if the general election results turn out to be favoring Imran Khan, because the others have been browbeaten and prevented from campaigning, and there is no free and fair competition, then you have basically de facto military rule with Imran Khan as their puppet.
The state actors have always been the face of the nuisance value of non-state actors in Pakistan, and that is why a large number of these decisions which are taken at the international level or at the domestic level, they all echo the kind of populist sentiment that people have. And problem in Pakistan is that large number of people want moderate and liberal voices to come up. They want to modernize, they want to develop, run along with global economies and develop in that respect, modernized, westernized, whatever you can say. But at the same time, there is some section of the population which wants to reinforce those conservative, regressive ideologies, and then they tend to gain a better stand as compared to the moderate voices. And this is what turns out to be a very deadly or toxic combination, where these people, the state actors, tend to be dictated or in turn reinforce the kind of vicious circle that both of them work hand in glove with each other, and then the resultant is this.
Right, Sheetal. Well, I want to share with viewers a very interesting comment given out by Nawaz Sharif himself. He says our contest in the coming elections is not with the People's Party and not with Imran Khan, it is with aliens. And what he means by this are these invisible forces which are behind the curtains and which are manipulating processes. Everybody knows that especially last couple of years, the military has almost taken center stage. They recently shut down GeoTV, the most popular private television channel, saying that it is engaging in propaganda against national interests and against the military. So they are now in the driver's seat, and they seem to be wanting to shape the results and the run up to the elections in such a way that it's a fait accompli that their pawn wins the election. So very dangerous time for India and for the region, because we know if there is more pro-Islamist regime, even a nominally civilian regime in Islamabad, it means a threat and peril for the whole region. So let's watch out and hope that the international community has some kind of a restraining effect as we move towards the furor of the general elections in July. Okay, moving on from Pakistan, Prime Minister Modi is doing a kind of a full court press to get back in Nepal's good books. You remember in 2015 there was a bit of a hiccup in our relations with Nepal, but since then they have been trying very hard to normalize, and he has reached out to all the political parties. KP Oli, the current premier of Nepal, just visited last month, and now Modi is again reciprocating. It's going to be his third visit to Nepal. It just shows how critical this country has become because of the Chinese influence, also because it's right on our border with Tibet, and also the perception that our neighborhood first policy of the Prime Minister really will be decided in a kind of a hotly contested zone like Nepal. Let's listen in.
On May 11 and 12, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is visiting Nepal for the third time. This follows the Nepalese PM KP Oli's India's visit in April. India is trying to win back trust of all the political parties in Nepal after relations dipped down in 2015. PM Oli had previously been anti-India and was booing China. India is looking to enhance railway and waterway connections with Nepal and also implement a variety of development projects there. But Nepal is favouring trilateral cooperation with both India and China. Can Modi's use of cultural and developmental diplomacy ensures continuity of India's influence in Nepal? What should India's strategy to face the Chinese challenge in our backyard?
The Chinese challenge in our backyard is, cannot be denied. It is there, and even though we don't officially mention it, it is in the backs of all our strategic elites as we plan how we approach Nepal, a country like Nepal or Bangladesh or Sri Lanka or Maldives. But Nepal is unique because we have a very strong cultural connection, and Prime Minister Modi is going to be visiting two important temples, Janaki Temple and the Muktinath Temple. And he is also going to try and re-emphasize how this unique Hindu majority country has been tied for millennia with India. They are trying to revive the Ramayana tourism by linking up with Ayodhya in Uttar Pradesh across the border. So there is an effort going, in terms of creating a people-to-people connect and maintaining it, which is very unique because the Chinese do not have that with Nepal. But yet the question is, the Chinese tend to be faster at building infrastructure links. They are saying that they will extend the Qinghai-Tibet railway all the way across the high Himalayas up to Kathmandu. So while India is now, we are proposing to also build a railway linking Raxaul in Bihar with on the other side inside Nepal. We are not sure who is going to do it first, and it looks like in a way the trains are racing from both sides, and the Chinese caravans will also come in. Although I must say, tell viewers that even now geography is such a big barrier that we may sometimes overestimate the penetration of China into Nepal, because even now more than 2/3 of Nepalese trade is with India. But the question really, Sheetal, is have we now entered a kind of a rosier phase, because it does look like we have mended fences. not just with KP Oli and his Communist Party, but even with the Maoists and of course the centrist Nepalese Congress, as well as the Madhesis. These are like 4 different factions, and we've been, I think, quietly working and rebuilding the trust that was lost a couple of years ago. So in a way, things are looking up, and the fact that PM will be there again in Nepal, for the 3rd time, shows that we are really giving them the deserved political importance.
There are 3 things in this visit we must look at. One is the kind of cultural connections that Prime Minister wants to revive. Now, there is one thing very interesting, that we talk about, this one cultural belt which could be called as Indic belt. The Indian culture, civilization and its impact extends up to Indonesia, Cambodia, Thailand and all these countries which have their cultural connections which date back 2,000-3,000 years ago. Now, what is very important, that we have not been able to take advantage of the kind of cultural connections that we had. So, somewhere we have lacked in combining all these forces together in the wake of the economic weight that China had. Now, look at the ASEAN and China trade relationship, much more than anybody can imagine, almost more than half of or 3/4 of their trade is happening with each other. So, what is very important is, one, how to establish the cultural connections. The second aspect of it is that we require stability in Nepal in order to harness the importance of the Nepal-India relationship. The third important dimension is that the connectivity business, because large number of people from Nepal, they come and work in India. Although the reciprocal is not equivalent, however, large number of people are working here. So, we require a kind of safe environment, stable environment, where once again, we do not have any threat emerging from Nepal if in case we lose track of. And the third thing that I would like to add in this, Sriram, is that we are focusing on look east policy, but we also need to understand that we have to look around. All the neighboring countries in the SAARC region, or we say South Asia, they are smaller countries, and India can always better its ties with all these small countries.
Yes, in fact, Sheetal, the aid that we have increased for Nepal this year is 74% increase in foreign assistance. India has done it. So I think we have identified some crucial countries where there is a perception that we are not really doing as much as we should be, or we are not as generous as we should be, and in a way we are opening the purses and saying, for you we can go to any length. So it remains to be seen how much we can do more with building the confidence in Nepal. But what is interesting, Sheetal, is that this anti-India sentiment that keeps cropping up and is exploited against us by in some of these smaller countries, that's something we need to find a longer term solution to tackle that, because if it depends on which party is out of power and which is in power. Whichever is in opposition says that Indian hegemony is rising and we have to do something about it, they are big brothers, and most of these allegations are unfounded, but we don't seem to be doing so well in terms of public relations. The Prime Minister is trying very hard, but after the visit is over, some small incident and again they will allege that India is imposing unequal terms and conditions on us and is exploiting us. So how do we deal with this in a more systematic fashion? Our PR and our public diplomacy, how do we reach out to ordinary people and keep them, win the hearts and minds of all our neighbors?
These 4 countries in our neighborhood, Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, with all of them we have certain issues, either with border or on water sharing or of refugees or diaspora, whatever you may say. But what is very important is that we have to be consistent in our efforts in order to engage them and try to find out a long-term solution to all these specific problems that we have with these individual countries. Otherwise, what happens? There will be a vacuum in which China is ready to step in and fill that vacuum with its checkbook diplomacy, because certainly these countries are resource crunch countries. They require a large amount of investment to enhance their level of development and all these things. And at that point of time, if China comes and fulfills those patches and the vacuum areas, then it's very difficult for India to go back and start the relationship afresh.
Very difficult indeed, Sheetal. But we have, I think, apparently called a spade and told Nepal, for example, the Budhi Gandaki hydroelectric power project, which they want to revive with China. KP Oli has been clamoring for that. We have apparently sent a signal that if the Chinese build that hydroelectric project, we are not interested in buying that power. So I think we want to be absolutely crystal clear that there are some red lines, and just as the Chinese say they have red lines, so do we. And I think Nepal, which is caught in between in many ways from their point of view, will try to always play off the giants in order to extract the most benefits for itself. But end of the day, Prime Minister had emphasized that we will revive the Mahakali Treaty, do some work on the Pancheshwar Dam, where Uttarakhand on our side and Nepal on the other side will both benefit. There had been a lot of opposition to this, saying that this is Indian hegemony and all that by anti-Indian forces in Nepal. But I think we need to overcome those public resistance, because ultimately if we say it is our backyard or if it's our neighborhood, they need to have love and respect for us and not just fear or a sense of alienation. And I think we are working towards that, and it's a good sign, Sheetal, overall, that we have been rebuilding this phase. Last 2 to 3 years have been quiet, no major incidents. The Madhesi issue is a little bit on the back burner right now in Nepal, and that is helping us, because the moment there is fragmentation there, somebody or the other will use this anti-India card and
There's
come up again.
polarization of opinion, and that's always fanning the fire.
So,
between the two countries.
so viewers, today we have only this much time really, but I want to simply conclude by saying that India's neighborhood and extended neighborhood is going through major churning. What happens to the Iran deal will have massive repercussions for India, because we have invested in Chabahar port and we believe that Iran is a strategic partner of ours. And again, we may see American pressure against us to try and reduce our oil purchases and reduce our investments and business dealings with Iran. So this is not good news. Pakistan, what is happening is absolutely not good news for us, because if the secular civilian parties are being sidelined through violence and state power, then we are in for trouble, and we need to prepare for potential armed conflicts. And last but not least, what happens with Nepal in terms of the Chinese presence and the encroachment will of course impact upon our strategic autonomy and freedom to make choices in our own region. So a critical time for India and for our neighbors, but we have interests, and we have tried to articulate those always in Foreign Pulse, a distinct Indian view on world affairs. So keep watching and keep thinking about how India can handle these challenges and maintain its tryst with destiny. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Sheetal, for being with us. Thank you, viewers. See you next week.